Austria's famous capital city has been the subject of countless famous works of art, from classical music to more modern hits. Billy Joel, anyone? There's a good reason for this. The winding, narrow alleyways and streets, the elegant architecture, warm and hearty cuisine, breathtaking religious art, and of course, classical music's most esteemed composers create a culture and an atmosphere unlike any other. Deep into continental Europe, on the relatively flat eastern Austrian plains and along the famous Danube River, Vienna is a place that feels both quintessentially European and quintessentially Austrian. And to capture this essence for you, I'm inviting you into an experiential dive that will highlight the sights, the sounds, the scents, the tastes, and the feels of the city, leading your imagination into a state in which you can mentally place yourself on the cobbled squares. Let's get started. So first off, the sights. Exploring the streets of Vienna by day can make you feel as if you've been transported into the set of a Wes Anderson film. Almost uniformly, Vienna's color palette is white and beige, with sporadic splashes of pastels. And there's very little exposed brick in this part of the continent, if any at all. As you look up while you're strolling the winding canyons of gracefully aged buildings, you'll see that terracotta roofs are common, although the roofline isn't completely dominated by them. And I don't want to overstate the similarities to Paris, but Vienna really is the relative in that the architecture and building height is fairly uniform, but with more pastels in Vienna. The building facades and gardens are intricate and ornamental, and that's thanks to Austria's old wealth. And there's a general sense of poise and a legacy of high society. In contrast to Paris, however, Vienna doesn't feel as iconic or dense as Paris. And the river plays less of a role in the city's general layout and atmosphere, and the Danube is relatively far from the historic core, so the atmosphere and ambiance is pretty different because of that. And while the curving and winding streets and paths through the inner city can feel pretty uniform, albeit beautifully, the domed and the spired cathedrals sprinkled throughout the city are each a unique work of art, each one more inspiring than the next. Right in the heart of the inner city, surrounded by modern cafes, shops, 21st century corporate brands, and hundreds of locals and tourists alike, this is the towering St. Stephen's Cathedral, a massive stonework of art with multiple spires and a steepled tower that positively glows in the sunset. From atop the main tower are panoramic views that showcase the dense terracotta blanketed city below, and views around the perimeter of the city that reveal strikingly tall modern skyscrapers, the Danube River, rolling hills, and miles upon miles of patchworked farmland. Inside, an echoing grand stone sanctuary, candlelit with stained glass windows, beautiful Renaissance murals, and intricate statues carved into the walls and pillars. As you explore through the heart of Vienna, you'll find cathedrals both tucked away in unassuming building rows and also standing proudly as the centerpiece of the block. St. Peter's Church, often regarded as the most beautiful building in Vienna, is an example of the latter. From the outside of the cathedral, you may not perceive the place as Vienna's most beautiful and elegant structure. Gorgeous though it is, the true extent of this cathedral's allure is in the sanctuary itself. A massive, echoing rotunda adorned with Renaissance murals to the very top, golden laced and candlelit, awaits you as you enter. And the sanctuary is in fact so decorative and stimulating that it's difficult for your brain to even know what to begin on processing. And in fact, with this particular sanctuary, you can take an elevator lift all the way to the top so that you can get a closer look at all of the paintings on the dome, which I thought was quite fascinating. The inner city is, of course, more than a stunning walking art history museum. It's the historical, commercial heart of Vienna. Along the dozens upon dozens of canals of buildings throughout the area are chains reminiscent of New York's Fifth Avenue, restaurants that range from high-end schnitzel to McDonald's and Five Guys, legendary composer, Mozart-themed souvenir shops, cafes, and clubs. By day and night, central Vienna feels more like a festival. And along the side streets, you'll notice Würstel stands, and to a lesser extent, kebab stands, everywhere. I'll talk more on these as I describe the tastes of Vienna, But these stands usually include a small standing table or a metallic bar for locals and tourists to eat and savor in a variety of sausages, brats, and drinks. The atmosphere here is distinctively Austrian, despite the inclusion of far too many international chains to count. Distinctive architecture aside, for example, street signs on the buildings have a bit of a classic Bavarian look to them, especially in the curving and rather eccentric font. So small markers on many of the buildings in the form of the red and white Austrian flag and a W for Wien, I think I pronounced that right, Vienna's formal name in German, Austria's official language, mark significant moments or homes in the city and country's history. Noticeable as well is the Austrian flag, flown frequently in Vienna. This makes sense, of course, being Austria's capital, but it's a bit different than, say, Lisbon, where the Portuguese flag really isn't on display all that much. This felt more in line with Spain or the United States. And as the capital of Austria, Vienna is home to countless museums, palaces, and gardens. As you move away from the tightly wound inner city, sweeping lawns and parks of grass, hedges, gardens, and fountains greet you cordially, surrounded by domes, white-stoned palaces, both present-day governments and testaments to an imperial Austria. On a gorgeous summer day, you'll see Austrians picnicking, sunbathing, or just flat-out partying. Another great place to explore on a summer's day, although more famous for its Christmas offering, is Vienna's Naschmarkt, or Nash Market, an open farmers market with dozens upon dozens of permanent stands featuring fresh seafood, fruits, spices, spirits, souvenirs, cafes, restaurants, and much, much more. Outside of the urban core of Vienna, you'll stumble upon eccentric modern skyscrapers, neighborhoods with their own central cathedral, such as St. Francis of Assisi, a cathedral with a less imposing but just as striking brick Romanesque design, the Danube riverfront, complete with its own rather small beach. Talking to you guys, Chicago. Is it really a beach if it's on a lake or a river? And a grungier, grittier overall atmosphere than you'd find in the more tourist-trodden streets of inner city. Worth visiting outside the city center are the Imperial Palace and Gardens. The sweeping palace will transport you into a world in which Wes Anderson meets Florida. An odd concoction, but intriguing nonetheless. And getting to the further flung parts of the metropolis isn't a challenge at all, because while the Vienna metro system, U-Bahn, is pretty average in terms of its overall design and look, which is about the same design as any run-of-the-mill metro system, it's efficient and simple. It actually kind of reminds me of a cleaner and more spacious New York City subway. So now on to the sounds of Vienna. What does this city sound like? Well, Vienna isn't a very loud city. If you've read any of my prior blogs or watched any of my prior videos about European cities in general, you'll know that I am much persuaded of the old adage, cities aren't loud, cars are loud. This is certainly true in Vienna, which is incredibly pedestrian-oriented, but interestingly enough, the cars that do navigate their way through Vienna's streets are quiet, and honking is seldom. While Austria's language is of course German, and there's plenty of it to be heard, I was surprised by the amount of American accents I picked up on the streets and cafes, and the sheer amount of people speaking English generally. The sound and ambience overall is made up of the clinging of patio dining, horses trotting on cobbled stones, pedestrian footsteps, birds chirping, and of course, quiet though it may be, the sounds of cars and motorcycles echoing through the urban canyons. While not exactly related to the experiential soundscape and ambiance of Vienna overall, there's an element to the Austrian auditory experience that can't be overlooked: the opera. I had the good fortune of securing a last-minute ticket to Mozart's Don Giovanni at the State Opera House. The singing was immaculate, the acoustics of the space were great. Of course, the show was sung entirely in Italian, which led to the need for me to read along in subtitles. And to accompany the soundscape of the opera, I might add, is a genuine and rather regal sense of high culture, from the ornamental and exquisite opera house and theater to the black ties, the complimentary terrace refreshments of wine and cakes, and the absolute event of it all, an occasion. A night at the opera, in a way, captures the overall spirit of Vienna itself. As you mentally place yourself in the winding Viennese streets, gazing upon a sea of terracotta-roofed, pale, mid-rise buildings sprinkled with a sea of domes and turrets, listening to the sounds of the metropolis on the move, you're caught with a series of distinctive smells that give you a further sense of place in Vienna. wafts of schnitzel and coffee from the street-side cafes, sausage cooking at Wurstel stands, the age and mustiness from the older buildings, and an assortment of plant smells from the countless parks will keep you well assured of where you are in the world. For my favorite part, the tastes of Vienna. So Austrian cuisine is easily one of my favorites. Much of the signature dishes found in this part of the world are direct precursors to the kinds of food that are in the United States and that we cherish as our own. To really capture the sensory experience of Vienna, here are just a few tastes to keep front of mind. We'll start off with the classic Vienna Schnitzel. The juicy, tender, intensely flavorful, softly breaded and fried Vienna Schnitzel. Made from veal, this chicken patty-esque delicacy is fairly expensive, but worth it. Adding lemon juice or cranberries makes it even better. Vienna wouldn't be Vienna without warm apple strudel. I was able to try several variations during my time in Austria. A standout order was from Café Landsmann, again, I hope I pronounced that right, Sigmund Freud's most frequented cafe. Thick, juicy, and perfectly heavy, this amazing strudel was doused with a creamy vanilla sauce and accompanied with coffee. Vienna is of course famous for its sausages, and you're quick to understand why. From brats to franks, these links are thick, juicy, and hot. I ordered mine several times for the several varieties, sliced with brown bread and Dijon mustard. Usually it's handed to you on a paper plate, and this is a great snack to grab as you stroll through the inner city. The feels of Vienna. Well, Vienna is warm, especially in June. But it's nothing like what one would experience, such as in my home city of Washington, D.C. in the United States, where the air feels like soup. The air is less humid in Vienna, and while a bit warmer than, say, Stockholm, Vienna has totally bearable summer heat. Notable among many other places around the world that I've visited that are located along a large body of water, typically the ocean, Vienna is incredibly landlocked and doesn't seem to experience the same breezy moderation that other coastal or lakeside places do. As with any new place on the planet, there are oddities and peculiarities in Vienna that I want to talk to you about now. A lot of Vienna's tourism seems to be centered on Mozart. Speaking of tourism, most shops feature items with the quote, "No kangaroos in Austria." This commonly sold gag gift is in reference to a large number of tourists, particularly Americans, who are disappointed to find that kangaroos and the outback are iconic to Australia, not Austria. Bummer. People sell beer on the side of the streets here, which is pretty dope. A lot of shops and necessities like grocery stores are closed on Sundays. Learned that the hard way. Vienna is a little dirtier than some of the places I've visited, but still not dirty. There's a little graffiti, and some areas are less kept up from a landscaping perspective, but overall the city is still quite nice. People aren't exactly warm and fuzzy here, but they're not rude either. They're just curt and direct. There's a sense in Vienna that you're in the middle of a sea of countryside and farmland, and while this is true to an extent, it's a metro area of millions of people, and yet you have this ever-present sense that you're very, very close to farms. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me. It's noticeable and a bit strange how many places in Vienna are cash only. In Stockholm or Brussels, for example, it is expected that you don't pay in cash. In Vienna, I had to make way too many impromptu ATM runs. And on that note, they were very trustworthy of me to go to the ATM and bring them back cash. Vienna, and Austria as a whole, seems less tied to the identity of the European Union than places like France and Belgium, perhaps more similar to Sweden and Spain in that regard. Vienna, in general, seems very self-aware that tourism is a driving factor of its economy, and they appear to embrace this wholly. This is a huge difference than Washington, D.C., for example, where tourism is highly concentrated just to the National Mall and some of the surrounding areas. Some final thoughts on Vienna. The overall aura can really be captured by my night at the opera, a night which solidified my perception of Vienna's regality, class, elegance, rather stiff nature, and high culture. The city is a symphony, a palace, represented globally by the likes of Mozart and Beethoven. It's gold-laced, it's dripping with Baroque Renaissance architecture, And even among the Wurstel stands, the homey apple strudels and schnitzels, the Austrian capital radiates a certain sense of high society. Thanks for listening today, guys. Hope to see you soon.